Subrata Ghoshroy from MIT, and he's going to speak about the Pentagon budget. Erica Fine is joining us, and Erica is going to talk about destabilization from nuclear weapons upgrades. Erica is the advocacy director at Win Without War. And Professor Jonathan King is going to talk about fund healthcare, not warfare, vaccines, not submarines. So I will introduce all three of our speakers, and then each of you has, we said 8 to 10 minutes, but you can take an extra minute or so since we're missing one speaker for this panel. And we'll have a little extra time for questions at the end. Subrata Ghoshroy is a research affiliate with the program on science, technology, and society at MIT, and a visiting professor at the Tokyo Institute of Technology. He's also the co-chair of the International Network of Engineers and Scientists for Global Responsibility. His research includes defense policy, spending, and Pentagon waste. Erica Fine is, as I mentioned, the advocacy director at Win Without War. She engages policymakers, the NGO community, the media, and grassroots partners to advance a progressive and peaceful foreign policy. Her work has centered in and around Congress and foreign policy issues. And previously, she served as the Director of Government Affairs and Nuclear Weapons Policy at Women's Action for New Directions. Jonathan King has a long history of directing biomedical research programs at MIT, and he serves on the Public Affairs Committee of the National Biophysical Society. Jonathan currently serves with me as co-chair of the Mass Peace Action Board, and he chaired the program committee for this conference. And in 2020, Jonathan initiated the Healthcare Not Warfare campaign of Massachusetts Peace Action. So Subrata, will you go first?
Okay, thank you, Rosemary. And thank you, Jonathan and Cole and other organizers of this great annual event for inviting me. We were given a budget of about 8 to 10 minutes, and usually my talk on the Pentagon budget, et cetera, takes at least an hour. So to be efficient, I decided to not use any slides just to also avoid glitches. I would refer you to my talk that I gave last year at a part of the MIT's independent activities period in January on the politics of defense spending. And you can find that talk very easily by going to the website of MIT's Radius, which is one of the co-sponsors of this meeting, is radius.mit.edu, and then you just look for the politics of defense spending, where I have the data on the budget and so forth. So let me give you some highlights from the budget description that I gave in the talk. So the federal budget, the total US federal budget is $4.7 trillion. This is for the FY 2020, fiscal year 2020, which I presented last year, of course. $4.7 trillion. It's, of course, an enormous amount of money. But the most of the budget goes towards mandatory programs like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, paying the tremendous interest on our rising debt, Veterans Affairs, and so forth. So if you leave aside that mandatory part, the discretionary part is about $1.4 trillion, and more than half, it's about 57% of that discretionary 1.4 trillion is the nominal defense budget, which is 740. The actual budget is higher. We are now in the second quarter of the fiscal 2021 budget, and the 2022 budget, which will start in October, is already on its way to Capitol Hill, although probably some last minute massaging is taking place with the new administration taking over. One of the things that I forgot to mention to Rosemary is my experience in dealing with the Pentagon budget while I was a professional staffer on the House Armed Services Committee, working for a very progressive African-American congressman, the late Ronald Dellums. And so here is a couple of more reference points about just putting it in context about this enormous defense spending. Let's say the nominal budget is 740 billion. So that is more than the combined budget of the next 7 big spenders in the world, next 7. And I did some little bit of my own math and put together this other statistic, which is that the US and its allies, the NATO allies, and countries like Japan, South Korea, etc., Australia, they together spend 4 times as much as the principal adversaries like China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, Venezuela, and Cuba. 4 times their spending. So we are definitely the outlier when it comes to spending on the military for the kind of threat that we face. And Bill Harding, of course, gave a very good exposure of why the way things, it is going the way it is going. We cannot do anything about it. So, and Bill talked about this defeat of the ICBM amendment that was put in by Congressman Ro Khanna in the last year's markup in the House Armed Services Committee, where I used to sit in the as a staffer, and it was defeated with a lopsided vote on the committee. And remember that we, the Democrats, now control the committee. When I was there, Congressman Dellums and Congresswoman Patricia Schroeder from California, many of you who have been following this kind of stuff know her name. And Pat Schroeder and Dellums, we used to put in an amendment every year while the defense budget was being considered. That was cut the top line of the proposed president's budget by $1. $1 is a symbolic cut, but we wanted to set an example that if we can cut it by $1, then the precedent is being set and we can talk about more cuts. And lo and behold, every year it got defeated by the committee. So the lobby, the complex, the universities, you name it, are benefit from this huge spending, so they want to keep it going. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to talk about one specific things about the defense budget, one specific program, which I recommend that we organize around to cancel the program for 2 reasons. One is the domestic reason, and the other is the international reason, meaning that this program, which is the program on missile defense, and I was in Congress actually working for the Government Accountability Office at that time after leaving the committee, and I was a chief investigator, so to speak, and technical analyst for a fraud allegation on the missile defense program. And I discovered a fraud for which I had to actually blow the whistle because there was so little action taken after So the program itself has a lot of issues. And what is the missile defense program, for those who are not familiar with it, is that it got started in a big way in 1983 when President Ronald Reagan embarked on the Strategic Defense Initiative, which was to build a missile shield around the United States, and then expanded, of course, globally, around the United States to stop Soviet ICBMs carrying nuclear weapons. Oftentimes in the discussion of the missile defense, the nuclear weapons part is left out, but it is the nuclear weapons that drove this policy on missile defense. So Reagan embarked on this horrendous program, absolutely science fiction, and no technology was proven. And for 40 years, this program has drained the US Treasury by $300 billion, staying in the so-called research and development phase, and has produced no new technology. I have written many articles about the missile defense program for the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientist, and the last one was in September, which you could refer to. It is called, "Why Does the Congress Still Support a Program That Is So Much Discredited in Every Possible Way?" So I'm going to say a few things about that. And Rosemary, you can sort of give me a hint when I should stop, or maybe 2 minutes. First of all, this program got started, as I said, in 1983 with the Strategic Defense Initiative, and big, absolutely Wild West atmosphere of spending without any accountability on all kinds of technologies, with lasers and microwaves and you name it, for shooting down missiles. But in 1991, 92, the senior Bush, after the end of the Cold War, scaled it back. We already spent about $100 billion and we got nothing for it. And in 1991-92 timeframe, he scaled it back. President Clinton came in, and Clinton wanted to scale it back further. And we had some very good hearings on the committee about the lack of benefits of such a program. But by the time the Republican Revolution happened in 1994, the program got started again in a big way, with Newt Gingrich putting the missile defense in the Republican program, or the program plan, or the contract with America, and which had the one of the planks was that thou shall deploy a missile defense system. And President Clinton in 1998 got suckered into a deal with the Republicans. This was when I was directly involved in the deliberations in Congress, and where he was very much in a difficult position with the scandal, Monica Lewinsky, and basically he cut a deal with Trent Lott that, okay, Democrats will lay off on opposing missile defense and the Republicans will lay off on the president.
Subrata, I guess we'll say 1 more minute.
Okay, so
Thank
we
you.
have this situation with the missile defense that the Congress, the bipartisan support. So I want to say 2 things, and we can talk about this in the Q&A. One is that we should stop this total wasteful program that has not produced any technology. And on the other hand, it is creating incredible global danger, because with a missile defense, whether it works or not, the adversaries like Russia and China, they have to respond. And we know generally it's accepted that defense produces more offense. We are at a juncture now when we can take a bold step of demanding in Congress, stop the waste, stop this program, and without missile defense, it'll be much easier to negotiate treaties with Russia and China for limiting nuclear weapons. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Subrata. I think that's the perfect setup, is it, Erica, for